Welcome to Center of Light. Good to see you tonight. Crystal clear, my dear. To this idea, we should adhere. Do you hear me? Welcome to Center of Light. That which lives inside of your chest, if you will, is what creates worlds and universes. That's the game right there. That is your salvation. What? Crystal ball? No. That's what the crystal ball represents. Clarity. It's spherical, meaning it encompasses all things from the center point outward. Crystalline in structure, which everything is made of, as God, love, is able to wend its way through everything in eternity. It's a hologram. Everything is a hologram. The center is clear. You can bet God is clear. And it projects this beautiful, unencumbered, unfiltered light from the heart. But you see, the Ya has to pass through the Na. And that's where things get a little entangled and mangled up. That being said, welcome to Center of Light, Wolf. Oh! I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. The storm can bitch all at once. Tonight is Center of Light, Wolf. The big bad ego, analogous for the big bad wolf. Hello, Kelly Bird. Hello, everyone. The ego has gotten a real bad rap. I get it. I think, I'm sure of it, that most people, it is true in certain contexts, but more so than that one or a few select context, it doesn't hold up. It's not really true in the other ways. The ego is not what people think it is. Your ego is a taskmaster. So we should equate what people are calling ego to wrong and selfishness, guilt, all these qualities. The ego is every bit as important as non-ego. Non-ego, ego. Together, they hold hands in prayer to create a greater experience of God, which is the light and the dark, zero, while all points on a graduated scale are reckoned and balanced, which creates an explosion, a big bang, kaboom, and through the big bang is a burst of light. When male semen hits a female egg, did you know, at the moment of conception, there is a burst of light. Scientific fact. In fact, they got it on video. So the ego has gotten a bad rap. The big bad wolf. It's got a bad rap. And so it's not really a teaching tool when we fully don't understand what the ego is. It creates confusion. It's not rich, if you will, in its definition of what it truly is. Without an ego, my friend, let me refresh my Facebook chat room again. It's being a little temperamental. Without the ego, you cannot drive a car. Hello, Calvin Renando. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Soma. KK. Everyone on Facebook. Kelly, Robert. KK, Kelly, and the like. Without an ego, you cannot drive a car. You'd be pure spirit. You have no desire, no will, no desire, no want for anything. It takes ego to do whatever you want. It is the taskmaster. The problem happens is when it becomes the slave master. The ego is designed, and truly it wants to, follow your every conscious command. The ego wants to follow your every conscious command. But when it gets a little taste of power, it wants more of that. And then the true self begins to dwindle, if you will, as we begin to move into greater gradations of the ego being dominant. The ego now becomes the alpha. So without the ego, you cannot walk around, you cannot eat food, you cannot do any of the things that you want to do. So the ego, the big bad wolf, has gotten a bad rap. There is a difference between the different layers of ego. As human beings on this earth, we come in, we're taught certain principles, certain ideas, certain models, certain cult. You hear me? The word cult does not mean what most people think it means. Cult is not this bad thing where people go and hang out in communes and plan to kill people with Kool-Aid. That's not what it is at all. Cult means we're in a culture. In America, we follow one way of doing things. We are patriots. In Europe, they follow a different way of doing things. These are different cultures. So, like ego, it's gotten a bad rap. So when we come in, we get ego. That's part of the deal, man. That's why we came here. It's to play in the human meat suit and in the cosmic sandbox. But on the earth, hello, Elaine. And that ego becomes installed early on. I can tell you exactly when it comes in. Your baby brother or sister, or you just had children yourself. And they want to touch those nice things on the coffee table that your great-grandmother gave you. What do? No. Or even just simply the word no. No. And we mean it forcefully because, look, I get it. We love our great-grandmother's things. I get it. So what you do is you pick them up, put them somewhere else. But the idea of no means I don't understand, because the child in their innocence knows that their grandmother's things belongs to them, because great-grandmother, when they were both on the other side together, said, those are your things that I'm giving you to pass to your children. So the child reaches for things because it can, without interference, without exception, until we say, you can't. That's when the ego is born. I am separate from them. Everything is separate from me. Ego is not necessarily this bad wolf. It's gotten a bad rap. We have to understand how it has its purpose, which is to compartmentalize an aspect of ourself so it can actually do its job that it wants to do, which is the taskmaster. It's the taskmaster. He'll tell you so. Try to go to sleep at night with a busy mind. He'll tell you everything about it. He'll tell you about his job, what he's here to make sure that you do, one thing that you can't do. He'll tell you the whole story. So different layers of the ego. The human being resides on earth, grows up, continues to expand the weed of ego, or water the flower of spirit. That's called choice. Free will, unencumbered, God's given divine birthright to all of us, choice. That's the whole point. To come to earth and choose to make this world a heaven on earth or not. This is an experiment, I tell you. Along the way, the consciousness of a collective cosmic ego has inserted itself in the great fall, if you will. And we're seeing that great fall fall down right now. It's the same experience. That happened eons ago. This is happening now. That's true, but in a linear ego mindset. But in a spiritual heart set, there was no eons ago. This is all going down. The soul is trying to correct itself. So we have the lower base ego. We are humans. We survive. Fight, flight, fright. We get a little better, and we realize that it's not about the ego in the sense that it's about selfishness. That's ego, selfishness. Wrong versus right. Right and wrong. That's part of the ego as well. Right and wrong is part of the ego. I'm going to read you that here shortly from Homecoming. Right and wrong is still operating in the BIOS, the duality of your computer mainframe and your software. But once we start to release these selfishnesses, that's actually the cap. That's the umbrella. There's lots of little tributaries and arteries and veins in there that fall under selfishness. That's ego. This is me, that's you, it's about me, go away. All that kind of stuff. But as we get a little better, play the game of life correctly without cheating. You can't cheat. Begin to move up into the divine ego. What is the divine ego? The divine ego is you being the anchor of heaven on earth. That's what the divine ego is, and its intention has been for us to fulfill. I'm ego, implying I'm on the earth. I'm divine, which means I'm up here in the stratosphere of spirituality. This is heaven, or greater degrees of bliss. And when those two come together, I am spirit, I am divine, but I have an ego which creates an individuality of myself. This is John, this is Jane, this is Jack, this is Jill. But collectively, consciously, we connect in the divine aspect of the divine ego. So this would be the equivalent to, if you look at your hand, let's say, I have to turn my hand this way because we need analogies, we need pictures. That this would be heaven and this would be earth. And we all see ourselves as, everything's backwards, individuals. Me, you, your brother, your cousin, my best friend, so forth and so on. So down here would be the ego. And as a person begins to graduate, we move to the knuckle, which is we are still an individual, but we are connected in spirit. This would be God, the whole hand in the first place. So the ego has a compartmentalized position to make. It's a taskmaster, I tell you. You can't kill your ego. You don't want to kill your ego unless you want to go back to God completely. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what we're all trying to do. But point is, you can't kill your ego. In fact, the more you try to get rid of your ego, the monkey inside is going to scream because you're beating him with a bat. You're trying to kill it. Nothing in the universe wants to be killed. Same with the ego. And the ego turns itself within fear because that's where it feels most powerful. That's part of the selfishness. But true ego is about you as the master, the creator of your life. That's called destiny. Unconsciousness is called fate. So that you, as the master of your destiny, can say, I have this God-given faculty, this God-given tool, so that when I use my Yah in the center, the little ball, the Yah, God, the oldest name in the universe, many forms of God's name is but Yah, Yahweh, that would represent the circle in the Y, the heart where there's absolute clarity. The N, notice the bar across the top, implies a linear timeline. And when that linear timeline becomes that very same zero that is in the Y, but now there would be another zero up here to imply What is it? What is 0? Union, wholeness, completion, eternity, relationship. That's why we wear the ring. And then Va would always be the one that carries out your wishes. That's it. When we understand the personage that the ego can be for us, to us, through us, when we no longer become imprisoned by the slave master, that we gave the power away. We gave our power away to another aspect of ourselves that does not know how to wield such power with love and tenderness. But when we are in control, if you will, the master of our destiny consciously, the ego says, yes, I will do whatever you ask. Yes, I will do whatever you ask. Center of light, wolf, the big bad ego, as in the big bad wolf. From homecoming, I want to make an announcement. Robert, thank you for giving me these gifts. Everyone, I'm offering for a donation of $25 this astronomical ring. I want to show you what this looks like. Check this out. It's freaking cool, man. That's what these look like. I have them in silver and gold. $25 donation to Center of Light. I'll send you one. Also, I have one more ring left that looks just like this for a donation of $35. I'll be glad to send it to you. I do this pro bono. This is how I make my living. But also, I have a pendant, a Mayan calendar pendant. These are going like hotcakes. It's very, very heavy, very durable, good chain. And I will send you one of those for a donation of $30. If you want a ring, pendant, or the eagle ring, let me know. Comment here, send me a Facebook inbox, or contact me, KeithAnthonyBlanchard@gmail.com. Now some reading from Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. This happened many, many years ago. That was revised into Homecoming as a compilation with another book I wrote about my trip to India. Robert says he's going to donate more gifts to Center of Light. So thank you, Robert, and everyone for participating. From Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge to the Soul, we're going to be speaking about the wolf, the big bad ego. I asked Spirit, why is alignment so difficult for people? Because most are still waging an ongoing war in their minds. The noisy battle between right and wrong, which has kept them rigidly locked in their victim position. Though you are now able to tune much of it out, to tune out much of your mental static, Keith, know that most people have much more twisting of the dial to do before I can come in loud and clear for them too. If one lives his or her life with a right or wrong point of view and uses past memories to handle present circumstances, the stillness and clarity necessary to make sound choices will never be available. I am not saying that that position is either right or wrong. I am saying it can only result in one of those two possible outcomes. Ego keeps people strapped in the front car of their own emotional roller coaster on a ride that never ends. Because just over every incline is another right or wrong scenario that launches them through those disorienting swoops and loops yet again. As long as people refuse to get off their judgment ride, they can never hope to plant their feet on the solid ground of peace. Concepts of right and wrong are taught by and learned from parents, society, and those who claim to be authorities on the subject of God's word. But what if the true meaning of life is neither way? How on earth can someone come to understand another alternative? And I ask, through a teacher through a teacher who embodies it? Yes, Keith, I've sent many to the world to show you that there is a way that is neither right nor wrong. In a beautiful world, unconditional love would do the influencing, for it is the most effective way I know to create the peace that you seek. Those who have not heeded these teachers' example are living in a right and wrong world, which is why they have such trouble agreeing about what is supposedly right or what is supposedly wrong. And I ask, is there an original sin? If so, what is it? That would be conscious separation from God, but conscious or not, you cannot separate from me. And despite your God amnesia, your higher self is ready to emerge so that you can become love on earth. Another thing that keeps you from knowing the self is the large dose of doubt you still carry from many lifetimes. When will you realize that doubt is the most destructive force to inflict upon yourself? What do you think prevents you from knowing? And I say, confusion? Yes, but why are you confused, Keith? It's like there's a battle going on within me. I feel I know what's right, but my analytical mind still tries very hard to convince me otherwise. I guess I've allowed the stuff I've taken in since birth to rule all my decisions. Yes, that internal struggle is what I meant earlier when I spoke about right and wrong. This is really important. Confusion has shaped your every doubt. Doubt has created your confusion and lack of clarity. Fear has taken away your power to create the life you truly want. These are your only opponents. There are no others. The only way to win this game we are talking about is to stop playing it. Why do I still find it so hard to tell the difference between what's spirit and what's my ego? Spirit responds. Every aspirant on the spiritual path goes through this phase of not being able to tell for sure when the ego is dominating, cracking that whip. But your not knowing says it loud and clear. The ego is still in charge. Yes, even though knowing is your natural state, you still sometimes depend on your ego for answers it is incapable of providing. You see, since the ego can never communicate with spirit, it will always insist that it is you who are the incapable one. When it does that, doubt begins to creep in and you stray away from being the deliberate creator you so want to be. This, again, falls under the ego aspect I talked about earlier of selfishness. I want, me. And I ask, well, does guilt serve a purpose? Spirit, guilt serves the sole purpose of letting someone know that they are in poor choice mode. If people would just slow down and begin to pay attention to the thoughts they are thinking, they would be able to differentiate between the low ones and the high ones. And they would see how religiously choosing the higher ones can only help them climb up the spiritual ladder. People who live in a constant state of guilt are not happy at all about the inevitable idea of death because they fear what they think they are going to face when they die. I ask, well, if this is how they think their afterlife is going to be, why is it they do not change the bad behavior that they think will land them there? Spirit says, good question. And I have an answer that just might surprise you. Deep within everyone, the truth resonates that hell does not exist. But many have not yet found a way to unlearn the false programming that consumes them. Anyone who truly believes that if they are bad, they will be condemned, should find that prospect enough of a deterrent to stop their supposed wrongdoings. Basically, people are lying to themselves. They're in denial. Anyone who truly believes that if they are bad, they will be condemned should find that prospect enough of a deterrent to stop doing their supposed wrongdoings. That alone should scare the hell out of them. Seriously. And I say, I agree. It's no wonder why so many people are so head over heels confused. You are trying to find, oh, here we go. I got something messed up here, excuse me. It's no wonder so many of you are so head over heels confused. You are trying to find peace using a thought process that is outer to inner, fear over love, hell over heaven. I ask any who actually believe that God behaves like they do, why do you not behave like me? And I say, I guess it's hard to duplicate your behavior if within ourselves we don't know you well enough to do so. Spirit says, very well said. I say to all my loved ones who are hearing these words and are still living back to front, reverse your thinking now. For if you continue letting your ego dictate how you live, the entire drama, as all been explained, will unfold before you, and you will find yourself in the same spot in your next life, having to do it all over again. If you are living without a clue about what is happening in this period of change, without a clue about who you really are and why you are really here, heed the following. You are being guided now in small steps you can manage. In due course, love will expand into your lives until you are consumed by love and become love, and in love merge as one with God, who is love itself. Understanding that, we understand the place the ego has. It's a taskmaster. It wants to be your good dog. Yes, master. Go get the ball. The ego wants to be your dog. It's loyal until betrayal has inserted itself. I'm not saying necessary from our family, but from our family's family and our family's family and our family's family. This is all imprinted and genetically in the DNA. It's always been this way. We have to unbreak curses, if you will. Not by anybody's fault, just the fact how DNA is passed down lineage after lineage, just like a seed planted in the ground grows forest after forest after forest. So the ego is a taskmaster. It wants to serve you. But we gave it too much of a taste of power. And ooh, it wants to be the boss. Well, you don't play the ego's game. Don't become an employee of the ego. He'll get you. I'm learning this. Take your power back. How? It's not forceful. It's loving. Love your ego. Understand what it wants to give you. And in turn, it will give you everything. You want a car? God damn it, you go get you a car. That's ego, car driven. That's ego driven. Fantastic. Enjoy your car. The problem happens when you feel bad about buying your car and that you bought the car. See the difference? One is I deserve. I'm a child of God. I can have anything I want. I go get the car. Until the voice shows up and says, psst, you shouldn't have bought that car. You should not have bought that car. See? That's the self-destructive mechanism of unconsciousness that wants to rip your life apart. That's the level of power it has. Take your power back. How? There's no how. Do. Just leave it alone. Don't give it any thoughts except feelings of love. There's a huge difference between feelings and emotions. Feelings are generated by spirit. Emotions are generated by the mind, the selfish, egoic mind. Big difference. Now you know what arena you're playing in. Let's move on to some video presentations. I want to say thank you, a powerful monk. He's American, but early in his life, he went to India to become a monk. He was a monk for 12 years. I recently interviewed him on Center of Light Radio, and I thoroughly enjoyed talking with this powerful gentleman. He made a video, gave me permission to use it. He explains the aspect of the ego that I've been talking about, even though I've been not talking about it so much so in the good way, but the ego as in the selfishness, the part of us that people say they want to destroy. If you're a creator of God, you don't want to destroy anything. That's not love. Love doesn't destroy, love allows. So you don't want to kill your ego, you don't want to destroy it. And he gave this Rajan, Shankara, I'm about to play, get this really powerful, concise, very clear understanding of the role the ego has. Check him out. I'll be right back.
So, and no matter who you are, no matter what's going on in your life or what dynamic you're dealing with, social or personal, professional or intimate, there's an ego balance. So we have ego. One of the biggest misconceptions is that on the path of life, we need to get rid of ego and just kind of be this spiritual light ball of love, which isn't the case. We'll get eaten alive if that's the case, especially if we're in the corporate world, which is full of nasty, dirty people. We have ego for a reason, and ego is a very, very special thing. It's a powerful tool. It's a operating system. So we're all running our OS, which is Ego Sierra 2.0. And we're all running this operating system. As the programmer and designer, us, our soul, we have a problem where certain viruses get through to the operating system, and it makes the ego more powerful than it's supposed to be. It's like an overvalued stock. And it takes a little while to recognize that this is happening. So that's where balance comes in. We don't want to remove the operating system. We don't want to remove ego. Without ego, we wouldn't have the desire to do anything, even love. We wouldn't have the desire to eat. Ego is just the foundational operating system that helps run our platforms and our apps and our life. It's the fabric of reality. It's the mesh that everything is built out of. It's the rays that come out of the sun. So ego is the energy that flows through everything. It's so important. The key is to not be completely absorbed by it and burned by it and eaten alive by it, and to lose yourself inside of it. And that's where these viruses come in. You get narcissism disorders or narcissistic disorders, and you get manipulative, and you get lustful, and you just get greedy. When the ego has taken over completely, we become worse people. When we're in control of ego, we have a balance. So we use our desire to make it in the world, but we don't try to step on people as we go up. We use our balance of ego to attain personal pursuits of perfection, like being healthy, playing sports, having relationships. But we keep some of that ego to make sure that people don't manipulate us or take advantage of us. You know, we look out for ourselves to a certain degree. We need that operating system to be running smoothly, but at the same time, we need to remember that we are the coders. It's our operating system. We designed it.
The power of Christ compels you. I'm blessing you with holy light, holy water. It's good to see you guys. Tonight we've been speaking about center of light wolf, the big bad wolf. He's gonna huff and puff and blow your house down. The big bad ego, the big bad ego. So our fear is what makes the wolf larger than he really is. I love my ego. I love who I am. I love the ability I have to do what I do. I do exactly what I want. I need the ego to do that. If not, I would just melt back into the all. Same with you. It's just the way it is. So the ego, or the wolf, since I've been talking, as well as my beautiful brother who shared that powerful, concise, clear, articulate information about the power position the ego really has when it's in balance, the wolf is already beginning to shrink. Right? You can feel it inside of you shrinking, right? I can. Rajan did a fantastic job. He helped me to see greater into the possibility of what I already knew. But he did it in such a fine way. It helps me to see even clearer what it is. And so now that I'm conscious and clear, I can actually lovingly take my ego and put it in my computer where it runs its optimum. Wow. How do you do that? Do you need some spiritual tools? Yes, just your will. Literally, grab it. If you need to use your hands, fine. Grab it and say, you know what? I am so sorry. I appreciate you. I love you. And you place it where it feels natural. Here, here, here. Where does it belong? It's your operating system. You built this computer. You run the software. Boot yourself up. Upgrade your system. Execute your programming. Your operating system will run better. Grab it. Literally grab your ego, place it in your heart, if that's where you want. And have a shake hands deal go down in there. Keith, it sounds like spiritual woo-woo. Who cares? You are the creator of your life. Every thought that you think or passes through your mind that you select happens. In fact, it happens in the moment. It may take some time for it to manifest, but it's happening in the moment because you're the one having the feeling surrounding the thought you have selected that's passing through your consciousness. Couple of more videos. I'm going to play them back to back. Powerful spiritual teachers. Enjoy. Tonight's presentation is about the ego, the big bad wolf, the part of the mind that is unconscious, meaning the selfishness. It's about me, myself, I. But also we have been speaking about the ego, which when one lives in clarity, they understand that it's a tool to be used versus it making you a slave and using you. Consciousness is everything.
How does one deal with the egos? Or maybe a larger question, how does this whole thing arise and how do you, where does this conclude?
See, a lot of people have taken on this mode. Whenever they do something nasty, they would like to blame it on you, but you are not willing to take it. So they blame it on Mr. Ego. Where is this Mr. Ego? He only comes in when you're nasty. When you're beautiful, when you're joyful, when you're loving, when you're wonderful, Mr. Ego is absent. Only when you're nasty, you want to put it on somebody else because you haven't found anybody else, you have invented one Mr. Ego. There's no such thing. It is just that human beings are right now in a condition where sometimes they're pleasant, sometimes they're unpleasant, sometimes joyful, sometimes miserable, sometimes wonderful, sometimes horrific. This is what they are. Is there anybody here who is 24 hours good, oscillating? This moment you're wonderful, next moment you're nasty, isn't it? So, because of this volatile inner nature, because it's not established, in the yoga we say, yoga saha kuru karmani, first establish in your yoga, then act. That's not been done. First is action. When you're first action, this is what happens. Because you're unsettled, you're going from pleasantness to unpleasantness just about any time with smallest instigation, you have invented Mr. Ego. See, if you say, me and my ego reside within this body, what it means is, There are two of you. If there are two of you, that means you're either schizophrenic or you're possessed. You need either a psychiatrist or an exorcist. So there are no two people. There is only one person here. You are an individual. If you are an individual, what it means is the very word individual comes from the word indivisible. That means you cannot be further divided. If you are an individual, you understand that I am sometimes so nice, sometimes so horrible. If you just realize this, would you want to be horrible? You will not want to be horrible. But this one thing they're dodging by inventing Mr. Ego. When people come and ask me, Sadhguru, what to do with my ego? Give him to me, I'll kill him right now. Where is he? No, he comes once in a way. Whenever you want to pass the buck to somebody, he's always there ready. Instead of that, some people don't go through all that. If they become little religious and if they think they're spiritual, what they will do is, they will give up their ego and they find God. All the nasty things that they do, they say it's God's will. They're taking instructions from him, so you can't argue. People have waged wars, they've done horrible things to each other, the nastiest possible things they have done to each other because they were taking instructions from God. Others are taking instructions from a local guy, which is Mr. Ego.
Okay, well, first of all, we need to understand that the ego structure that we take for granted, that is who I am, is today a neurotic structure at best, okay? The collective has actually fallen from neurosis into perversion and psychosis. That's the main line now. So if you're neurotic, you're doing pretty good. But we've been studying the neurotic ego here. If you've been visiting, you've missed some of that. But the film, for example, or the novel by Stevenson, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was the first novel that explained to the public the split mind. The fact that you could be this very good and proper Dr. Jekyll on the surface, but this seething, aggressive, hateful, sexually obsessed creature was in your unconscious and was actually running things more and more. And so this neurotic structure was not always part of human reality. And it really came into its own around the end of the 18th century. At the same time that society was becoming officially atheist. Okay, Nietzsche, God is dead. He was just reporting something that was already happening, but he's famous for that statement. But it was happening at the same time. Darwinism was taking over, materialism, of course, capitalism, the whole structure and purpose and nature of society shifted from a religious, metaphysical, mythological culture to one that had given up all myth except the myth of the ego itself. The ego myth replaced the other myths. But the ego myth didn't become a myth that you believed in, you just believed in it without realizing that it was a myth. You took it for a reality. Which is what was true in the earlier societies about their myths, but their myths were about God and angels and divine assistance and things that enabled you to have a much healthier consciousness. But that was lost. And now, so what is left is a compensation. And the compensation required a belief in evil. You see, if there's no God anymore, that means there's no goodness. Goodness is not real. That's pie in the sky. But evil is very real, or seems very real. And the only way for the ego to feel real was that it would have to feel evil. But the only way it could get away with feeling evil would be to repress the evil into an unconscious so that it could feel good consciously. But the conscious goodness didn't feel real. It felt good, but it didn't feel real. But the fact that evil existed could enable you to also then believe that goodness had to exist because you felt so guilty for your evil that you invented somebody to feel guilty toward for this. And so God could become recreated as a fantasy of someone I'm going to confess to for my evil. And so the modern ego became an ego based on guilt. And of course, that's where Freud came in, because that's what he made his money off of. You know, you feel guilty for your superego, you feel guilty for your enjoyments of all kinds, right? And for all of the Mr. Hyde aspects of your unconscious, and the whole thing took off. So psychoanalysis was, you could say, the objective correlate of the neurotic ego. They needed each other. And psychoanalysis, I would say, is part of the same sickness, disguised as its cure. But in any case, it was this evil that made you feel real because of your own aggression and hatred that could then be topped off through the guilt with a sense of surrender or submission to some higher power. This is what held together the coherence of the ego in the face of its own lack of an organizational principle once God was considered to be a flawed fantasy of a projection of a father figure or whatever, and had no reality. And so once that became the collective consciousness, it was very hard to have an authentic love for God. You felt stupid, you felt marginalized, you were ridiculed. So you could be very religious, but religion no longer had anything to do with love for God. It was about tradition. It was about, we do this because our grandfather did this, you know, the old time religion, or, you know, this is who we are, and we're this tribe, or we're this group, or we're this whatever that you identify with at the social level, but it had nothing to do with any internal relationship to a higher power. So the ego's connection and relationship with itself had to be based on this duality of good and evil. And once you recognize that both of those are flawed, it's true that there is no good, and it's also true there is no evil. If you get into the realization of non-duality, then the duality of good and evil becomes simply a dream. There's no truth to it, but that's at a much higher level of consciousness. You can act in a very evil way at this phenomenal plane and feel very good about it. This would be the perverse mindset. Ha ha, I got him. And be able to feel better the more you're able to stick it into somebody without them even knowing you did it, all right? Or being able to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, you know? And so this kind of relating in a way that you would feel secretly both the enjoyment of the superiority of harming someone and the guilt that would enable you to feel remorse is what actually held you together. And this is the structure of the modern ego. We've already gone past that. We're in the postmodern, which is even worse. But this is how the thing morphed and then created social systems that were of this kind of neurotic intensity. And then they became more narcissistic and more psychopathic, and the lack of morality no longer was compensated by guilt. And now people can do the worst things to each other and not feel anything about it. So it's a constant degradation of consciousness into ever more degraded, negative, hateful forms, until love itself has become something we're cynical about. Not only God, but love. And no interest in love, because love makes you weak. You know, love gives you, conscience doth make cowards of us all, as Hamlet was already saying hundreds of years ago. But now it's reached epidemic proportions. So in any case, I don't know if I was answering somebody's question. I don't know how I got off on a tangent, but So be it. That seems to be the situation now that we have to deal with without feeling, we don't feel guilty about it, but even if we did, the guilt doesn't really help. It just cycles you back from remorse back into paranoia and hatred of the fact that you felt bad, and then you do something to feel worse, and the cycle gets deeper and deeper into the dark side.
Welcome back to Center of Light. I loved his presentation. I really liked Shunyamurti's presentation. We have devised a way to monkey with the mind versus the monkey mind monkeying with us. We've become even more better at ooh, ooh, ah, ah, ooh, 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 than the monkey actually can be. Another way we can see that is, I understand people are making shifts in their life, and they do that by wanting to become positive people. I get it. That's beautiful. You're trying, you're efforting, your intent is the basis of your choice. Regardless, there are other mechanics involved. You can know how to drive a car by reading the manual, but you're really not a car driver till you get in the car. A brain surgeon is not a brain surgeon just because he got out of college. He has to stick his hands in gray matter to understand what it is to be a brain surgeon. So to understand what the ego is, and always wanting to be, for example, always wanting to be positive. Again, I applaud your effort. But there are other mechanics involved. Trying to be positive all the time. I get you. Creates different vibrations. But is this the way we've learned to deal with the ego? Or has the ego gotten so good at the game that it knows how to deal with us? When we begin to monkey with it, the ego does not want to die. So you don't want to kill it. You just have to retrain your pet. Being positive all the time, could it possibly be that one is simply in denial? Trying to be positive all the time, has the ego gotten so good, this is your way out of me? And the ego is going, I got you. And we buy into it. And we want to just become positive. I'm not saying don't effort to be a better human being, nobility, by being positive. But understand there are other factions, fractions, and things that are happening inside this wheel, inside this hub, inside this machine that are moving. And it's for you, us, me, and the we of it all to become conscious of those very facets and fragments that keep moving. So always trying to be positive. This is not a support in you ever being negative. I'm asking anyone to look at themselves that if you're always trying to be positive, is it because you're running away or in denial of what is still buried there in the unconscious on a level you can't even see it? That is the ego. That's the ego. Not the good one. Not the one that becomes the taskmaster and follows your every command. Your employee versus it becoming the boss. And it's not a friendly boss. We've all had bosses that they could be leaders and we would love our job regardless of the pay. But they are the boss. Thank you very much for joining me, Center of Light Radio. Tonight has been Center of Light Wolf. I'm gonna huff and puff and blah, 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 your house down. The big bad ego likened to the big bad wolf. You saw that thing on my mouth? It looked like that was my mouth. I'm not sure what my next presentation is going to be. Oh, I do know what it's going to be about. It's going to be about children of light. The youngins. The ones that the parents from the old days whipped their ass. It's going to be about those who you and I were until our ego was whipped into us. There's a new consciousness coming to the earth in its children. And the little child shall lead them. In closing, from Homecoming Crossing the Bridge to the Soul, Part 2, which I'm going to be writing in the future. All who seek divinity must live a life free from wanting, for that is the source and cause of spiritual bondage. As long as one is constantly wanting, one will only fall farther away from the selflessness of grace and into the selfishness of ego. The ego mind is a cloth that veils consciousness. It is the cloth that veils consciousness, and your wants are its threads. But when you give up your constant wanting, the ego threads will fall away and the cloth will disappear, revealing your true nature, the pure, genuine self that is the soul. God realization will happen when you finally free yourself from the brain, the senses, the mind, the wanter. Once you break out of your finite little prison of individuality, you will become conscious, enlightened, one with the cosmic power. Thus, you will reach God. You are loved beyond measure.